My name is Chloe. For the past 4 years, I'd built a comfortable, if somewhat predictable, life with my husband, Mark. He was a high school history teacher, solid and kind, with a laugh that could warm a room. Our life was a tapestry of simple pleasures: Friday night pizza, Saturday morning hikes, and the quiet comfort of shared silence on the couch. It was a good life, a safe life. But sometimes, in the quietest moments, I'd feel a faint, restless stirring, a whisper that maybe safe was just another word for stagnant. And then there was David Mitchell, the Vice President of Strategic Development. He was everything Mark wasn't: impeccable dressed in tailored suits, with a razor-sharp wit and an aura of quiet intensity that commanded every room he entered. He was in his late 40s, with threads of silver at his temples that made him look distinguished, not old. He had a way of listening that made you feel like you were the only person in the world, his piercing blue eyes fixed on you, absorbing every word. He was my boss, my mentor, and, if I was honest with myself, the source of that restless stirring. For months, I'd caught him looking at me a moment too long in meetings, felt the brief, electric touch of his hand when he passed me a document. It was a dangerous, thrilling undercurrent in the otherwise placid waters of my professional life. This trip to Seattle was his idea. The Henderson account is crucial, Chloe, he'd said, leaning against my desk a month ago. I need my best person on the ground with me. You've earned this. The way he said my best person sent a shiver down my spine. Mark had been supportive, of course. He'd helped me pack, squeezing my hand and telling me to knock 'em dead. The guilt I felt at his unwavering trust was a small, cold stone in my pocket. The first day of the conference was a whirlwind of handshakes, presentations, and networking. David was in his element, charismatic, persuasive, brilliant. I watched him work the room, a master of his craft, and felt a surge of professional pride at being his chosen partner for this. During our own joint presentation to the Henderson executives, he seamlessly handed the floor over to me for the analytics section. When I finished, my voice only trembling slightly, he gave me a small, almost imperceptible nod. It felt like winning a gold medal. That evening, we had a formal dinner with the clients. It went well, better than well. The Henderson team was impressed, and the mood was celebratory. After the last handshake, David turned to me in the opulent hotel lobby. The clients had retired for the night, and we were alone amidst the soft hum of conversation and the clinking of glasses from the nearby bar. You were phenomenal today, Chloe, David said, his voice low and sincere. Truly. You handled their questions with a grace I rarely see. Thank you, David, I replied, my cheeks warming. I just followed your lead. Nonsense. You have a natural talent for this. He glanced towards the bar. The night's still young. Let's have a proper debrief. One drink to celebrate a job well done. It wasn't a question. It was a statement, delivered with that confident charm that was impossible to refuse. The sensible part of me, the part that was Chloe, Mark's wife, screamed to plead exhaustion and retreat to the sterile safety of my room. But the other part, the part that had been stirred by his attention, the part that craved a break from the predictable, one out, one drink, I agreed, my voice a little too bright. We found a secluded booth in the dimly lit bar. He ordered a Macallan 18, neat. I asked for a glass of Sauvignon Blanc. The initial conversation was all business, a rehash of the day's successes, strategies for the final meeting tomorrow. But slowly, imperceptibly, the topic shifted. He asked about my aspirations, what I really wanted from my career. He listened, truly listened, as I spoke about my dreams in a way I hadn't with anyone, not even Mark. Mark always listened, but his world was one of lesson plans and parent-teacher conferences. The cutthroat, glamorous world of corporate marketing was a foreign language to him. David spoke it fluently. Then he started talking about himself. Not the polished, corporate version, but the man behind the title. He spoke of a divorce 5 years prior, the quiet loneliness of a big house, the way work had become both his sanctuary and his prison. He confessed that he often felt like an imposter, a revelation that shocked me. David Mitchell, an imposter? I see the way you look at the world, Chloe, he said, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. There's a fire in you, a passion. It's refreshing. His foot brushed against mine under the table. I didn't move mine away. The air between us grew thick, charged with an unspoken tension. The one drink had turned into 2, then 3. The bar was emptying out, the world outside our booth shrinking to just the two of us. I should probably head up, I finally said, my voice unsteady. Big day tomorrow. Of course, he said, his eyes holding mine. "I'll walk you to the elevator." We stood in the silent, mirrored elevator lobby. The only sound was the soft whir of the machinery. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I pressed the up button, the sound unnaturally loud. "Chloe," David said, his voice barely a whisper. I turned to face him. He was standing close, too close. I could smell his cologne, something woody and expensive. "This trip, being here with you, it's been the most alive I've felt in years," he said. His words were a key turning in a lock deep inside me. They articulated the very feeling I couldn't name. That sense of being alive, of being seen not as a wife or an employee, but as a woman of substance and desire. The elevator dinged, the door sliding open to reveal an empty car. I didn't move. I was frozen, suspended between the life I had built and the thrilling, terrifying unknown he represented. He reached out and gently took my hand. His touch was electric. "Don't go," he murmured. Every alarm bell in my mind was ringing. This was wrong. This was a betrayal of Mark, of my vows, of everything I believed myself to be. But the pull was too strong. The loneliness in his eyes mirrored my own restless emptiness. The admiration he offered was a drug I hadn't known I was addicted to. I took a shaky breath. The doors began to close, and I instinctively put my hand out to stop them. I didn't say a word. I just looked at him, and in that look, I surrendered. I let him lead me, not to the elevator, but back down the hallway, towards his suite. The room was lavish, a corner suite with a stunning view of the city lights glittering through the rain-streaked glass. The moment the door clicked shut behind us, the professional facade vanished. He turned me to face him, his hands cupping my face, his thumbs stroking my cheeks. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice husky. I nodded, unable to speak. I wasn't sure at all. I was terrified, but I was also more awake, more visceral, than I had been in a decade. What followed was a blur of sensation, the taste of expensive whiskey on his lips, the feel of his hands on my skin, the whispered words of desire and affirmation. It was passionate, intense, and utterly devastating. In the midst of it, a part of me split off and hovered near the ceiling, watching the scene below with a cold, detached horror. That woman, tangled in the sheets of a luxury hotel room, wasn't me. She was a stranger, a traitor. Afterward, we lay in the dark, the city's neon glow painting shifting patterns on the ceiling. He fell asleep almost instantly, his breathing deep and even. I, however, was wide awake, the adrenaline replaced by a crushing, suffocating guilt. I stared at Mark's photo on my phone's lock screen, a picture of us laughing on a hiking trail, his arms slung around my shoulders, his face open and trusting. What had I done? The tears came then, silent and hot. I had not just cheated on my husband, I had shattered the trust that was the foundation of our marriage. I had broken the man who had packed my bags with such pride. And for what? For a few hours of feeling alive, for the ego boost of a powerful man's attention. The reality of my actions was a cold, hard slap in the face. I slipped out of the bed, my body feeling heavy and foreign. I gathered my clothes from the floor, dressing quickly and quietly in the dim light. I didn't look back at David sleeping in the bed. The man who had seemed so magnetic hours ago now just looked like a man, a flawed, lonely man, and I was just another one of his poor choices. I crept out of his suite and back to my own room. The bed was neatly made, the do not disturb sign still hanging on the door handle. It was a monument to the life I should have lived that night. I crawled into the cold sheets and wept until I had no tears left. The next morning was a special kind of hell. I met David in the hotel restaurant for breakfast before our final meeting. The air between us was thick with an unbearable awkwardness. He was professional, polite, but the intimate connection of the night before was gone, replaced by a stiff formality. "Good morning, Chloe. I trust you slept well?" he asked, not meeting my eyes. "Fine, thank you," I lied, my voice brittle. We went through the motions of the final client meeting. I felt like an automaton, my smile plastered on, my responses robotic. David was the picture of professional composure, as if the previous night had never happened. The contrast was jarring. For him, it seemed, it had been a fleeting indiscretion. For me, it was an earthquake that had leveled my entire world. The flight home was the longest 3 hours of my life. Sitting beside him in the pressurized cabin, the scent of his cologne triggering a wave of nausea, I felt a chasm of silence between us. We spoke only of work, of the follow-up emails we needed to send, the reports we had to file. The conversation from the bar, the confessions, the passion, it had all evaporated, leaving only the bitter residue of shame. When the plane landed in Phoenix, the dry heat hitting me like a wall felt like a judgment. Mark was waiting for me at arrivals, holding a silly welcome home sign and a bouquet of slightly wilted grocery store flowers. His face lit up when he saw me, and the sight was a physical pain. "Chloe, over here," he called, waving. I walked towards him, my legs feeling like lead. I had to force myself to meet his gaze, to smile, to fall into his hug. He smelled of laundry detergent and sunshine, a familiar, comforting scent that now felt like a reproach. "How was it? Did you knock them dead?" he asked, pulling back to look at me, his eyes full of love and pride. I looked into his honest, open face, and the lie formed on my lips, smooth and practiced. "It was great, honey. A huge success." David said I was instrumental. It was the first of many lies. The weeks that followed were a masterclass in deception. I threw myself into work, using the increased hours as an excuse for my emotional distance. I was short with Mark, snapping at him over minor irritations, projecting my own self-loathing onto him. I couldn't bear his touch, flinching away when he tried to hug me, citing stress and exhaustion. I saw the confusion and hurt in his eyes, and it only deepened my shame. David, at work, had retreated completely. He was my boss again, nothing more. Our interactions were clipped, efficient, and devoid of any personal warmth. The mentorship was gone. The special attention had vanished. I was just another employee. The aliveness he had offered was a phantom, and I was left with the hollow, aching reality of what I had lost. The guilt became a constant companion, a corrosive acid eating away at me from the inside. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I'd look at Mark grading papers at the kitchen table, his brow furrowed in concentration, and I would be overwhelmed with the urge to confess, to scream the truth and shatter the beautiful, fragile life we had built. But I was a coward. I was terrified of losing him, of seeing the love in his eyes extinguished and replaced with betrayal and hatred. One night, about a month after the trip, we were watching a movie. A scene came on where a character confessed to an affair. Mark shook his head and muttered, "I just don't get it. How can people do that? How can they live with the lies?" His words were a dagger to my heart. He wasn't suspicious. It was just an offhand comment. But it felt like he was looking right through me, seeing the filth I was trying to hide. I knew then that I couldn't carry this secret. It was poisoning me, poisoning us, from the inside out. The lie was a wall between us, and if I didn't tear it down, it would destroy any chance we had of ever being truly connected again. I waited for a quiet Sunday morning. The sun was streaming into our living room, painting everything in a warm, golden light. It was a picture of domestic peace, a stark contrast to the storm I was about to unleash. Mark was drinking his coffee, reading the newspaper. I sat down opposite him, my hands trembling so badly I had to clasp them together in my lap. "Mark," I began, my voice trembling, "we need to talk." He looked up, a gentle smile on his face that faded when he saw my expression. "Chloe, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." I took a deep, ragged breath, the air catching in my throat. The words felt like shards of glass. "On the trip to Seattle, something happened." I forced myself to look directly into his eyes, to not look away from the pain I was about to cause. With David, the confusion on his face was brief, quickly replaced by a dawning, horrified understanding. The color drained from his face. The newspaper slipped from his hands, scattering on the floor. "What are you saying, Chloe?" he whispered, his voice dangerously calm. "I'm so sorry, Mark," I choked out, the tears now flowing freely. "I slept with him one night. It was a terrible, horrible mistake, and I am so sorry." The silence that followed was the most profound and terrifying sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of our world breaking. He stared at me, his eyes wide with disbelief, then with a pain so raw it was almost physical. He didn't yell, he didn't scream, he just sat there, utterly still, as if he'd been turned to stone. Then, without a word, he stood up, walked out of the room, and a few moments later, I heard the front door close softly. He was gone. The aftermath was a desolate landscape. He moved out for a few weeks, staying with a friend. The few times we spoke were filled with tears, with anger, with his gut-wrenching questions. Why wasn't I enough? How could you? I had no good answers. There are no good answers for infidelity. We decided to try counseling. It was agonizing. Sitting in that sterile office, having to articulate my selfishness, my weakness, to watch Mark grapple with the betrayal, was a punishment far worse than any yelling match. He was shattered. The confident, cheerful man I married was replaced by a hollow, wounded stranger. I quit my job. I couldn't face David, and I couldn't bear the constant reminder of my mistake. There was no dramatic confrontation. I simply sent a resignation email, citing personal reasons. He replied with a one-line, corporate-approved acknowledgement. That was the end of it. Rebuilding trust, I learned, is not like fixing a broken vase. You can't just glue the pieces back together. The cracks will always be there, visible to both of you, a permanent reminder of the break. It's a daily, conscious choice to stay, to forgive, to try. It's been 2 years now. Mark and I are still together. Some days are good. We can laugh, we can talk, we can almost forget the shadow that hangs over us. Other days are hard. A random memory, a scene in a movie, a business trip I have to take for my new job, any of it can trigger the pain, and the wall goes back up. I lost a part of myself in that Seattle hotel room. I lost the woman who believed she was good, and loyal, and strong. I lost the easy, trusting relationship I had with my husband. The title of this story is Alone with My Boss on a Business Trip, but the true story is what happens after. It's the story of living with the consequences. It's the story of learning that the thrill of a moment's passion is a cheap, fleeting currency, and the debt it incurs can last a lifetime. The allure of the forbidden, the temptation of feeling seen by someone new, it's a dangerous illusion. It promises life but delivers a kind of death. The memory of that night no longer holds